That's nice.
Joining soon, sir. We just
It's 5 o'clock as per the...
Yes, sir. He will be joining soon. I just had a chat with him, and in a minute or two he will be joining.
Okay, sure.
Sir, I believe Deep sir would be joining as well. He has a meeting, but I think he said that for 10 minutes he would join.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening. How are you?
I'm good, sir. And our guest speaker, Chandan sir, has also joined.
Okay. Okay, Mr. Chandan Vijay, right? He's the first speaker, right? Today, no?
Yes, sir. Today is the first day. And it will continue.
Yeah, no. And he's the first speaker, I'm saying, right?
Yes, right, sir.
Right, yeah.
So, good evening, all. I, Abhinav Singh, on the behalf of SME-Connect Committee and IIT Club, would like to welcome you all to the first ever Analytics Conclave of School of Management and Entrepreneurship, IIT Jodhpur. We all know that data is the new oil. If data is the new oil, then AI and ML is the refinery, and analytics is the distillation process. Just like distillation process helps in segregating different strata of crude oil, similarly, analytics helps us in segregating data, data into valuable information and deriving business insights. In order to continue on this, we have launched Analytics Conclave, themed around the same topic, that is role of analytics in business and its key decision. Now, I'd like to invite our Dean, Atanu Ghosh sir, to speak a few words on this.
Yeah, good evening and welcome to the guest speaker and all my students' friend. It is a really nice opportunity to be with all of you again. And I know that what you rightly said, that I think the future is going to be driven by AI and ML. And as all of you know that this both SME and IIT Jodhpur is really trying to drive and get into the driver's seats for AI and ML kind of activity with the introduction of the new school, which we just launched on 6th of December on the occasion of just before the convocation. That shows that the kind of direction the IIT Jodhpur is moving on. And I think if we can leverage between SME and IITJ, the one is the technology side of AI and ML, But I think what is important for the management students to say, how do I apply? How do I apply for business process development? How do I apply it for customer convenience? How do I facilitate customer to make the right kind of choices? I mean, all kinds of convenience that is built around this AI enable. And we are realizing, I mean, as a user, I really hardly understand the technology, but as a user, I find how convenient it has become when I'm typing, drafting a mail, how this, it's coming and facilitating me even to do the correction, editing, which probably I could have never imagined 10 years back. So I know the way it will drive the future, and hope that it's all drive towards the growth of humanity, convenience for the customers, convenience of the citizen. And I applaud you for keeping this kind of activities on. And this Analytics Conclave is another going to be a crown on the SME's head. And this will spread the good word around. And my suggestion to all of you would be just make the best use of the people who are coming. I have seen this guest speaker, they are coming, they're all accomplished in their own field. And there's so much of learning possible. And they're all contemporary. They're all today, dealing with this subject day in, day out in the real life. So there's so much to learn. And this will really supplement what you learn probably theoretically or learning theoretically with this additional knowledge that you're going to gain from the people who are in the field, real life. So that's an excellent opportunity. Make best use of it. I would have personally, I don't claim that I understand too much of it, but I have still ventured to, get into it. I got another commitment, another meeting. That's why I have to be excused. But all the best. And it's really great initiative. Thank you, all of you. And again, I must express my gratitude to all the speakers who have agreed to be on this platform and share their rich experience with the students. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, sir, for your kind words. Now, I would like to thank Faculty Coordinator of IIT Club, Mayank sir, and Faculty Coordinator of SME-Connect, Preeti ma'am, for helping us throughout the process, and also Professor Balram sir for agreeing to be the moderator of this session. Now, I'd like to invite Balram sir to introduce the guest speaker. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Abhinav. First of all, welcome to Mr. Chandan Vijay. Very glad to have you here, and welcome to all of you. And I'm very glad that you're organizing the Analytics Conclave. To set the context, to pick up from what our dean, Professor Ghosh, has said, IIT Jodhpur is heavily invested in AI and analytics and VR and all data-oriented stuff. And so much so that we have formally opened the School of AI and Data Sciences, and it's intended to be a transdisciplinary approach. I'm one of the associated faculties with that school, and we have close to 30 faculties associated from various streams, everything from computer science, from management, from human sciences, humanities, mechanical, electrical. So we are looking at AI, data, analytics as not just methodology, so to speak, but how it can derive, derive benefits for various sectors, including the social sector and the business sector. And that is, in that context, having this conclave coming up over a period of time is very timely. And I should say that I should really thank the student body and all the coordinators for having started this initiative. To introduce Mr. Chandan, I think there is both a personal connect and a school connect. He's from my family city of Bangalore, and he's also done his bachelor's from Rajasthan, Udaipur University. So he's also a child of the ground from Rajasthan. So from my home family city to my Karmabhumi city, there's a connect there, and he's got a rich experience from General Electric, and also right now as the senior director of Cognizant. And when I went through his profile, one thing really stood out for me is he's also a recipient of the CIO Quarterly's award, Spotlight Award, and that's I know from my industry friends when I've been there that it's not lightly given. So I think you should congratulate him for that, and having been to Crottonville, and that's somebody a lot of managers dream to be educated at Crottonville, and he's done that. He's attended a few programs there. So I think from the context of being an industry person, and also the context of evolving field of data analytics, perhaps AI, I think he's a very fit. Nothing could be more fit that he's starting off the series. So, Mr. Chandan, while you're addressing some of the questions which are there in the minds of our students, could be what are the opportunities that data science and AI ML provides for businesses, right? How will analytics help in areas like personalized marketing or customer service, and how can organizations and organizations, also educational organizations, close the skill gap when it comes to what the industry needs and what the students offer in terms of data science and AI, and more importantly, how the post-COVID world can AI help in AI or analytics specifically help in scaling businesses. So these are some of the thoughts which are going on in the students' mind. So while you are taking us through your story and educating us, can you also touch upon this? So without much further ado, I'd like to welcome you once more to SME IIT Jodhpur, and the floor is all yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Professor Baram. Really appreciate the time that you've given to me. Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Ashwin. Sorry, Abhay. So, candidly, you've explained about my career quite a bit. So I don't want to go into explaining my career, but yeah, I've been through multiple domains. Started off with ERP implementations, shared services organizations. I ran infrastructure and operations across GE for several years. Became part of corporate audit staff. It's a very niche organization within GE. Unfortunately, it's getting shut next year. It's been there in GE for almost close to 100 plus years. So done advisory and audit works for CFOs and CEOs across different GE businesses. And most recently, before coming to Cognizant, I was implementing a unified finance data lake for GE, which would have helped in basically reducing the cycle time in quarter end closings. So that's about brief my journey. Now coming to the analytics part, because that's what my most recent role has been, and I think that's how Abhinav reached out to me. I mean, historically, if you look, right, if I look at my career, when I joined GE in 2003, it was all about, okay, how do we manage information management? How do we have ERPs for businesses which can run the processes? At that point in time, a lot of things used to happen on pen and paper. Managing a business sizes of even a size of a company of 500, 600 people, when you have pen paper kind of an environment, it is difficult. So back in those days, about 10 to 15 years back, information management was the most important thing. Everybody thought about, okay, let me automate my process, let me automate it through ERP, and my life will be simpler. Yes, to a certain extent. People went ahead, implemented ERPs, they had their account payable processes implemented, they had account receivables, the general ledger got implemented. Like India's Tally is the best software as an example. You could basically subscribe to Tally or implement Tally in a small business, and your business is up and running. That's great. As the years went by, those ERPs were not sufficient for basically running businesses. That is where the transformation from information management to slightly driving towards technology, the IT, if you ever recall. So till about 20 years back, it was information management 2 years. 10 years back, it started transitioning towards technology, where the web-based applications started coming in. I would say not even like 10, it was even more. But transition from managing the information to technology-based decision-making started coming in. Along with ERPs, how do we get our own personalized applications created so that the information that ERP could not give me, I could basically somehow create that data and use it to a certain extent to drive that information. So transition happened from information management to information technology. And as we come closer to years now, if I have to look at like last 5 years or so, the transition happened from information technology to digital technology. Now, it may be looking or sounding very simple, like what's the difference between information management to IT to DT? I think it was purely about a thought process, how you can bring in technology and digital systems to improve your customer experience, how you can innovate and bring new value add services using digital and technology to make better experiences for your customers, for your employees, for your service portfolio, anything and everything that happens around your enterprise. Now, having come to the digital world now, right? And you've got ERPs, you've got homegrown applications. These are all creating data. But what's happening is they are actually having a lot of historical information, transaction that has occurred, on transaction that you're going to execute. But it didn't give insights to your leadership about what can be done better, how we can do it, what are the various levers that you can apply, which would basically help make a revenue gain or improved service, customer service, or improved cycle time for basically your business deliveries and reduce the inventory. Now, these are various things. You could check your inventory levels in your ERP or your application, but it didn't give a lot of insight about what's going to happen in future. How would you make things better? And I think that is where the world of analytics started coming in the last several years. The journey has been in analytics also a transitional one. When all of these ERPs came in, when all these applications started happening, there are a lot of tools which came in to give you reporting needs, what you can give as a KPI or a key performance indicators. You could make dashboards which would give you your performance. Now, again, when I'm talking about saying your performance, a drawback to all of this was it was all historical. You could have a Tableau, you could have a Spotfire, you could have an OBI, you could make your own web-based fancy applications. You're using SQL or NoSQL or a big data platform and show using the past data that this is all my transactions. This is how my revenue collection had looked like in the past quarters. Past is the key word here, because everything that you had in transactions was past. So it could give you a descriptive analytics as to what has happened so far. Analytics started evolving with that. So what has happened so far to what is likely to happen? That is where the analytics started transitioning. And I think that is where the machine learning, the neural networks, the AI started developing on top of it. Because the way, if you look at your data, IDC predicts that by 2026 or 2025, I would say, every year we would be producing roughly in terms of about 130, 140 zettabytes of data every year. That's roughly 10 times the data that was produced in a single day or a single year in 2016. So the growth of data is tremendous. What do you do with that data? How do you use that data to make innovation, to make digital transformation, to make benefits for your enterprise? As Professor Balram said, right? How do you make your customer experience better? Now, all of you, I would want to try and experience Amazon in that way. A lot of us use Amazon, Flipkart, a lot of other websites where you can go and buy things or Flip. Now, how do they drive their revenue growth? You go and buy a certain product. Amazon gives you recommendations below that people along with this buy this also. Now, silently in your mind, they've triggered a thought process that, okay, I've bought this thing, maybe I need this also. Maybe you don't need it, maybe you don't need it. But that's a recommendation Amazon or a Flipkarts or the likes of all these giants like Walmarts are giving you. That's a personalized, basically, recommendation. Because you brought this, looking at your past purchases and looking at past purchases of a similar product, they are coming and giving you a recommendation, which is more about, now, it's sort of, if I were to call predictive analytics. They're just trying to predict that you might need it. Whether you need it or not, that's up to you. Sometimes people go by the recommendation and then they add that things in the car and say, okay, yeah, I see if I buy these two things, I'm getting actually a discount with Amazon. My price is actually getting reduced. So that's how the customer experience has increased. That's one aspect. Second aspect is, which is on the enterprise side, Amazon has increased their revenue. Discreetly or silently, that is how the analytics has played the role in your life and an enterprise. So when, I don't know how many of you remember, first and secondhand.com was a website that came, which started selling books in India. So they were also similar. They were just like have a listing of books and you could buy it. Now, Amazon was also doing a similar business, but they would recommend also, like, if you buy this book, maybe this is a genre of books that you've read or you've purchased in past. If you're reading this book, probably you might be inclined into reading this kind of a genre. Then these are 3 or 4 more recommendations is there. Now, I'm slightly older guy, so please bear with me on that part. Professor Balaram probably might connect with me. Being in 40s is a different story. We've been through a lot. So yeah, so as I was saying, right? So the journey of analytics also has transitioned over these years from descriptive, which is making dashboards about showing your CEO how my last quarter looked like, what is the revenue that we got, what is the payables that we gave, and how it's looking like. But this is all historical. With that, the invent of thing came predictive. With that, you start thinking, okay, I have all my historical data. I have all my supplier information. I've got all my invoices. I've got all my purchase orders. I've got all the recommendations, for example, in Amazon site, like all these people have brought. Why don't I apply some kind of a logic which will figure out if in past, how is this supplier paid to me? Or how is this customer paid to me, and how I've paid to the supplier? Can I actually delay my payment to a supplier without burning my bridges? Has the supplier given me a certain discount if I pay them early? So you could apply with your historical data and give a recommendation to your CEOs or CFOs or financial managers or customers in a different way. Let's talk about enterprise, for example. I'll talk about GE from an example, from a financial perspective. Now, I don't know how many of you are from a slightly financial backgrounds, but in any enterprise, when you talk about business, right, the most important thing is at the quarter end, at the month end, at the year end, you have to close your books, because that's what is going to present your annual report. And when you close your books, you have to basically close your balance sheet. It should tie back to your basically what goes in, what comes out. So with respect to that, there's a lot of work that people actually do about matching transactions. Now, a very simple thing that we did in G a couple of years back was that we said, let's automate this process. Let's see how we can make this thing to see that at least 90% of the general ledger can be tied back without a manual intervention. Now, I wouldn't go into the details, but believe me, when a quarter end happens in GE, there are approximately like about 12,000 different financial people who are working for 20 plus days, and they're trying to close the books, do different transactions, create manual journal entries, and then close books. With a very thought out process, with a very intricate process, an account reconciliation process was brought out, which was like, okay, I'm going to like look into my general ledger, I'm going to look at my sub ledgers and give a prediction that these are some of the matching transactions, and give a recommendation that this account or this ledger can be closed automatically. The outcome of that and several others program was like a typical closing process which takes 20 days plus time could be brought down to 5 days, or even the target is to actually even go lesser. Now, if you think about 15 days of productivity for 12,000 people, 15,000 people in a business, now they're free to do a lot of other meaningful work, which every quarter they would go about. If you start translating them into a dollar value, see how much of money you are, if not making, you're saving it for your enterprise. So this is all a power of analytics. Now, the next level of analytics that's happening is prescriptive. How do you go about from what happened to what is likely to happen to give an insight to your CFO and CEO, and what actions can they take to transform that likely to happen scenario? I'll give a simple example again. Now, travel is a very simple expense in any organization. Maybe not in a college, but in an enterprise like GE, a typical year's travel spend is in tune of anywhere between $2 to $3 billion. Now, that number is a huge number in terms of, even though it's $100 billion company, when you look at a travel spend just for a company, a 2% or 3% is a huge number. For some businesses, it's a significant amount. Now, if we start looking at simple analytics like, okay, today we're giving, okay, this many people have traveled, this is what their spend was. That's all descriptive. Now, futuristically, you're showing them, okay, these are all the travels which are happening. That's more like, okay, this is the likely spend that's going to happen. Now you're telling about all the future booked travels already, all the hotel bookings, all the airfare bookings, and showing a business leader that, okay, till 11th of December, your business has incurred $28 million in travel. If you look at the rest of the year for 19 days, there's another million of travel is already booked. There's these many airline tickets booked, this is hotels booking are there, there's car bookings. Now, this is more like predictive because you're telling that this is likely to happen, this is booked, this may or may not happen. Now, what you can do as the next level of prescriptive is, along with that, you're saying, okay, if you actually take these 10 functions, and out of the 10 functions, actually these 3 functions cancel all of their trips, you're going to save 700K of that 1 million. Now that's the prescriptive. You're not giving them an option to take an action where they can say, okay, if I change this in this way, it's going to save me a significant amount of money, 700K in a year. At the year end, does it make sense for somebody to travel? Typically, this is a holiday period. In an enterprise, people would want to take more holidays. Most likely, your business meetings may not be that productive because the people whom you might meet might be on vacations because this is a holiday season. So giving recommendations in that way that which can affect your outcome is your prescriptive analyst. Professor Balaram, do anybody wants to ask any questions so far?
Would you like to be interspersed with question? I can help with that one. Yeah. So while you're going through, you very beautifully stated an example of travel and how it descriptive and prescriptive. I'd also like you to touch upon about the predictive part of it. How far is the predictive part really coming through from analytics? Because if you take, again, a financial example, the mutual fund always ends up saying the past is no indicator of the future. So given this context, can you please enlighten me and the students on, is there a really predictive element or it stops prescriptive when you're really talking about making decisions? How would you categorize that, sir?
Sure. I'm not very well versed with the mutual fund world because my side of the world was mostly industrial and even in analytics it was financial space, but not tied to this. I can try to give an example in 2 spaces, probably again tying back to G. One is the healthcare space, and the second is probably I'll go and touch with aviation. So let's say descriptive is all about, okay, what's happened in the past and that giving a future. Now, if we want to talk about analytics, and healthcare is a prime example, especially in the COVID world, where you do a lot of CT scans and MRI scans. And in future, basically in past, when you would do a CT scan or an MRI scan, the machine was just a tool in the hands of the radiologist. They would do the scan and then looking at the images and using their experience and looking at their knowledge, they would be able to guide a certain outcome that, okay, it looks like there is a certain cancer growth out here, or there is a certain portion of heart which is enlargement, or there is a certain part of basically, if you were to call, any kind of a disease which can be predicted by the radiologist. And then the doctor would look at the images and give some kind of a recommendation that this is what I feel is happening. This is the next course of action. Now, over a course of several years, healthcare business made a tremendous leaps and bounds in image processing, especially using machine learning and analytics basically combined together. They said, why don't we give more power to the radiologists, to the doctors, that while the scan is happening, give them recommendations. So healthcare has been in the business of basically all these radiology businesses, MRI, CT scans, X-rays, combining the wealth of the data that G had from past so many years. The medical business basically took help of doctors, radiologists, and asked them to analyze a lot of images, a lot of scans, and say, okay, what are the different parameters that you would want to look to give a recommendation for a specific disease? using that information, that knowledge base, and combining the different image skill sets areas and the different image processing. Now, if you look at the advanced MRI machines or the CT scan machines that G has, it actually helps doctors predict much better, because with the recommendation that when the CT scan is happening, for example, a doctor is doing a CT scan. I wouldn't want to give a COVID example, but an abdomen where you're doing probably a kidney scan or a liver scan. The images, when they're happening, it can process at the same time with the data that the G has built in within the machine and storing as a repository, and it can give more clear insights to doctors that there is a certain element of this body function or an organ having a deformity or enlargement, or there is something wrong. So then they can focus more specifically on that specific area. The scans then highlight by different colors if there is a certain indicator which provides there's a certain change in the organ, or let's say the way it should actually look out. So from a healthy MRI or a CT scan to coming to an image which has been processed by certain with diseases, it can give a certain prediction that, okay, there is a certain amount of change which has happened there. Now, the radiologist has more insights to focus on that specific area rather than basically still continuing to do the full body scan or even a much more larger abdomen area. Another example is, if I were to call like aviation, as I mentioned, right? Or even for that matter, the power business. Now, when we do talk about power generations, or a lot of these large power plants have these turbines which actually run whether through steam power or any other means, and it produces the electricity. Now, any of the power plant, as long as it's operating, that's a revenue for the power plant. Any planned or unplanned shutdown is a revenue loss. The moment you're not making an electricity is basically revenue loss for that power plant. Nobody wants a unscheduled downtime because of any fault which happens in the turbine. And turbines are not small products; they're like huge. You can talk in terms of, let's say, like a 150, 200 feet long equipment which is installed, like example like a tabhol, kind of a power plant. G has been investing a lot in understanding the different faults that happen on the different kind of turbines. And the way it's been happening is what we call as a digital twin. It's a digital model of a turbine, and we apply every single parameter that could be done on a machine learning model or basically a data science model on top of that. And by applying all of that and by combining all the sensor data that has been there, which is as part of basically remote monitoring and diagnostics that comes up from different customers that G has, because we give them insights about how the plant equipment is doing, what might be happening, whether they need any help on all those things. So by combining all the sensor data from very past and understanding the different faults that are happening, G said we will not do a scheduled maintenance now. We will do a planned maintenance with a customer, or we'll give them a insight in advance by knowing their outage schedules. If we can come and do basically a maintenance which aligns with their downtime, or give them in advance a notification about when there is a likely fault to happen. For example, there is a turbine blade which is there. If the sensor is reporting that there is a heat generation happening in the turbine, which is beyond a certain threshold, by looking at the previous instances from different customers from different instances, we can say, okay, when this parameter started going up, what are the other variables started changing? When all of those variables start changing, is this turbine also showing a similar behavior? If a similar behavior happened, what was the outcome of that change? Now, by knowing this through a digital twin, you could predict to your customer, we see these changes happening in the turbine. When is the likely scheduled downtime that you are expecting? Because we see in the 45 to 60 days, a part may start behaving abnormally or may start causing errors, which may reduce the efficiency of the turbine or which may actually cause the turbine to go in unscheduled downtime. So we would want to know when in the next 45 days itself, can you give us a downtime, which where you can do the maintenance. Now, you see the two business aspects. One, you're not asking for a customer for a unscheduled maintenance. A fault is not happening. Customer is not losing business. You've already given them an insight. The other aspect of that is not the fault, but the performance improvements. By combining a lot of other data like the sensor data, for example, weather data, you can actually tell customers that since the temperature is this high around in your environment, and this is what the humidity is, our recommendation is if you run this turbine at this RPMs, it will actually produce more or more efficiently electricity for you and consume less fuel than how it should be. So there are two examples of this. One is how to basically support a customer. And then the second is more about insights. You're giving an insight to a customer to how to improve their revenues, because when you can recommend them what to do for the equipment that you've sold them in a particular environment, in a particular situation, and by giving them an example of dollar generation, or basically in terms of the revenue, giving them a number that if you actually do this, this is the performance threshold of the turbine. And by doing this, you are reducing your fuel consumption by this much. Now the customer is smart enough to understand, like if he has all these changes, if he has all these savings, he's actually going to save money. So these are more like prescriptive, where you're giving them a likelihood as well as you're giving them insights as to how you can impact that change behavior. Does it help, Professor Balram?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great way you have put it, because I'm very excited to hear the examples. One is because it cuts across traditional industries. And second thing, you also gave an example of the way analytics is useful for the B2B sector, which we seldom hear. So I think that insights were really nice and deep, and thank you for that. There are a couple of students who want you to ask questions. Unless you want to complete something more, or you want to go into a discussion mode, what is your preference right now?
I mean, I can definitely answer the questions.
Okay. Sure. So I will call upon Abhinav. He wants to ask a question.
Thanks a lot, sir. And you have explained a lots of your experience in predictive and prescriptive analytics, and thanks for that. So my question is, I'm coming from different background, and if I want to start a career in this field, and currently we all know that data analytics, business analytics is the buzzword. Everyone is going into this field. How can we differentiate ourselves in this field? I mean, what is the key skill that we need to have a position in the market?
Absolutely. I mean, I think you very rightly put a question, which is a very, very relevant question in today's world. People run behind the buzzwords, right? Like you talk about neural networks, you talk about machine learning, data science. One really, really critical thing to ask yourself is, are you really keen about that technology or that domain? Because, see, it's all about your career. Tomorrow, it might feel like, okay, did I choose a wrong path? Maybe you're really good at logistics and you want to do something about it, right? Now choose a career in logistics. This is my personal recommendation. Along with that, learn technology and then start understanding what is the use cases of data that you can do in that particular domain. So just making a career in saying, I want to do this data science thing, or I want to do machine learning. I think that's not the relevant way to ask yourself. The fun thing is, what is really I'm really good at, what I really, really want to passionately do about, and then introduce all of these technologies in that career threshold. Maybe you love doing supply chain, right? You understand supply chain intricately. You understand the whole process gamut. Now, in that, can you start very simply by saying, okay, let me start making some very simple dashboards. How am I doing in terms of my turnaround times for basically how is supplier giving me my material? Is any supplier lagging behind? Is any supplier like short in inventory at their end? What's the delay that's happening? Now, once you start doing these very, very basic things, you start building on top of that your machine learning, your data science things. It's okay. I have this, my organizations or my colleges past data. How can I use this data to build something which can give a meaningful insight out of it? Now the most important thing is you're still an expert in your domain. What you're building is you're adding a value add to your domain by technology. So digital transformation or digital integration, if you want to call, it can happen in any line. You don't really necessarily need to be a machine learning expert. Most of the people who really become good at these domains are the ones who had knowledge about their domains. They started learning about very basic things in their career. They started learning about, okay, how do I do dashboards? How do I do data warehousing with the data? Then they started learning, okay, what is data science? Data science needs a lot of statistics. So a lot of people think it's very easy. Tools make it easy, but you still need to have a relevant understanding which model to apply for which scenario. And that comes up with respect to your experiences that you generate or that you gain in your domain. So career-wise, you can be in any domain. You still have an opportunity to learn technology and gain insights into it. I mean, a couple of years back, we had a fresher from NITI. He had learned basically data science and machine learning on his own through different websites. He was really good at trading. And he made some really fancy algorithms to predict stock performances. And believe me or not, this guy had been like, when we hired him, he was, I don't know how many of you have Zerodha as a subscription, which is a stock trader. This guy was like a continuous winner for three times, a winner of those 6 months period. He was using his own models and he was improving his models. Now, he didn't have a knowledge about stock trading. He had basic knowledge he had his engineering skills. He had basic knowledge about stock trading. He found out data from different systems, from BSE, NSE and all, with respect to the past. And he started predicting, okay, what could happen. Now, this is very relevant to what Professor Balaram asked me, like the mutual funds. Now, there are a lot of parameters that come in, right? Knowing what variable or which lever to introduce into your model can change your data science model and can change its accuracy. Some models are 50% accurate, some are 95% accurate, some are 99% accurate. It's just because the person who built those models introduced those different parameters. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, sir. Thanks a lot for this. Sir, if I may ask another question.
Please.
Would you like to continue with your discussion, and then at the end we will ask question.
So Abhinav, there are a couple of more people wanting, but once they are through, you can ask the next question unless it's related to this one. So I will, in interest of time as well, that's a very pertinent suggestion you have given as to embed yourself in a domain, and I think the students should really understand what is said very closely, because end of the day, the data science is just a tool. I mean, you can really see it as a tool. Just if you take the example of the ERP from the past, there were a lot of practice areas in ERP. ERP was just implementation of the HR practice, the sales practice, logistic practice. So most of the people who were not computer science professionals really, but were domain experts, were hired by a lot of ERP solution companies because they wanted the domain expertise, right?
Absolutely.
Drawing a parallel right from the past, we can really say that data science is maybe, you can see it as just like Chandan has very rightly pointed out, it's applying data science in your domain. So while you're doing an MBA, it's a tech MBA from the sense of pick up your domains very carefully, get into it deeply, and I think data science and the tools and techniques are how to embellish that capability. So thank you for that insight, Chandan. Coming from practitioner, I think it's very valuable for the students. And next question, I'd like to invite Shubham Rawat. He had a question on that question. Shubham.
Yeah, good evening, sir. And first of all, thanks for the session, sir. my question on those lines, like you previously described that on the healthcare sector, you told that the machine will give the doctor direction to think about and recommend something. So, like, don't you think that this restricts the doctor to deep dive in other dimensions of the disease, and on those lines, like, if you're getting the point?
Absolutely, sure. I mean, that is a very valid point. But again, like it's just giving an insight or a direction to the radiologist or the doctors to predict that there is something wrong. So the purpose of adding all these dimensions, like if you remember, like you go to CT scans or MRI scans, like you have different slices of these various happenings. Even the latest MRI machines are less noisy, more basically patient friendly, so on and so forth. So along with that line of that, I think it's about experience betterment of your customer. Now, who's your customer? If you sell an MRI machine, there are two customers for you primarily. One is your end patient, because he's actually making revenue for the hospital or the radiology center who's buying that machine. But your another customer is your radiologist, because he's the guy who's going to actually use the machine and drive outcomes out of it. So he's going to give those insights. Now you're just giving him an additional tool, as I said, right? So it's just making this person's life a little more easier. That, okay, when you're looking at it, if there is a certain change observed in that imaging, it can just point out using different colors or different indicators to the doctor or the radiologist. It is still not telling 100% that this is what it is. Even in the very base scenario, right? Like today, if you go to a radiology center, at the end of the report, the radiologist still will write it down to be further evaluated by the physician and concurred with other basically medical parameters. So even the radiologist is not 100% confirming a certain thing. He is using his gut feel and his experience. More than the gut feel, his experience. That he has seen like 5,000 or 20,000 images in the last 10 years or 5 years, and basis of how it has happened and then how the patients have gone through, he's understood that this might come out. Now, whether he can spend that 20 minutes doing the same thing, or he can do the same analysis in 10 minutes because he's got a certain insight that, okay, when you passed through the liver while running the CT scan or basically an ultrasound, it gave you a visual indicator that, okay, there is something different. Now you can go in and probe a little bit more rather than running the whole ultrasound scanning thing on all your tummy, or basically doing a full spine CT or an MRI. So those are some of the very intricate differences where it can introduce. Yes, tools are as good as in the hands of the person using it. One radiologist can completely rely on it. The other can basically add that into his experience and say, okay, my experience at this is giving me additional insight. Let me do these two together and give a better judgment. So that both will happen.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yeah, so that gives us a segue into the next question, really. I think Nitish has asked a question about unstructured data. And the question he asked actually is, what can be done by an organization to have data growth in a structured or semi-structured type? So I would like to paraphrase a question to add on to that question, saying that, and add on to what you said is, we have heard about GIGO. It's like garbage in, garbage out. So in the context of analytics, one is, of course, structured versus unstructured data. Do we really have a choice to say that I want more structured data versus unstructured? The second thing is, what is the role of data curation in the whole business before we go on to that? What's your insights on the data curation part? Because a lot of times I find when I work with data, I think 50 to 70% of my time is actually spent in curating data right. If we don't curate the data right, the analysis is not going to really be very, it's not going to lend itself to proper analysis, so to speak. Correct, wrong, it's a different question. So can you please share with us the question what Nitish has asked, and also about structure, and also what's the role of data curation, and how do you think students should look at data curation, and what is the importance of that in your experience and view?
Sure, Professor. I think absolutely data curation is one part. Data structured, unstructured, semi-structured data. It again depends on the industry that you are in. For example, if you come into an industry where you're doing engineering designs, basically analysis work on engineering models or architecture and all, you will always have unstructured data because you're creating machine designs. Now, those designs will go into different files in PDFs or different architecture tools files, and they'll be stored in different drives because people, when they're working, they tend to keep their different versions on different folders. So a growth of unstructured data will happen in organizations where there's a lot of manual work required by them. For example, an engineering design, even though it's an automated work, but still there is a manual work environment because somebody has to go to a engineering PC. He will basically go and create an engineering drawing and design and do it. Whereas if you look at the enterprises like Amazon and all, unstructured data may not be so much because these enterprises have grown over a period of time and they've automated a lot of their processes through different systems. Whether it's inventory, whether it's logistics, a lot of these things are done by machines and barcode scanners. So every transaction gets automatically logged, goes into a system of records. Now here the data is very, very structured. It is in whether in normalized form. The same data can flow into a data lake where it may be broken into a denormalized form again and use it for a data mart or a reporting engine or analytics purposes. So the growth of data will depend on the kind of industry that you are in. I'm just trying to think through how I want to talk through about. So data curation is definitely one aspect which will come into any enterprise. I would say in a system where you have very clear processes, very clear systems, your data will be curated or data will be created in a very structured way. It will be like you started a transaction when you received an inquiry from a customer. It could be a Salesforce implementation, or it could be a homegrown application where somebody reached out to you through phone and you created a record that there is an inquiry that has come in. Now from there, your basically the flow or the threaded data starts flowing. A customer has approached you, inquired there, you've sent a proposal. So there's again a structured data flow happening. You also created an unstructured data in there because you've sent a proposal, which is going to be, let's say, a document which is there. However, you can still try and manage to curate it and then save it in a blob data, which is like the database can still reference it. And it has some indicators to a certain key parameters, which ties it to, okay, it was created for this customer, for this project, for this reference. Whereas I'm just trying to think through what could be a great example of unstructured data. Emails is definitely a great example of unstructured data. Everybody has their own mailboxes. Even though at enterprise level, all the emails are there in a server. But can you actually parse it for everyone? No, I think that is an issue because you might do compliance. That's considered somebody's private data. So that's a domain or that's an aspect you need to be taking care. Though the data is getting created in the organization in an email format, but it still is a private data between two entities or the number of people who have received it. So can you actually run your data science or can you run your analytics on that? I highly doubt that. So
what about social media analytics, which many of the companies rely on to get the mood of the customer and stuff like that? It's largely unstructured. So what's your view on the social media analytics, which many companies use?
Absolutely. See, there are multiple dimensions of that. There is the ethical versus non-ethical, which comes in. I mean, as GDPR came in a couple of years back, I think that is one of the key aspects of how you process that unstructured data. Are you allowed to do that? So looking at one way is, okay, I have got the streams that are coming in through my different social media accounts. Now it could be my enterprise account. So I'm perfectly legal to see who is responsible or who is responding to my social media streams. And by looking at that and by analyzing those profiles, I can actually go and approach them. Versus generically, can I go in and stream through different people which without their knowledge, which a lot of mobile application companies do, where they actually push advertisements onto your mobile phone. That's like an intrusive data analysis without your knowledge. You might be using certain application on your phone, and sometimes you get a lot of ads, and those ads are usually interconnected with the activity that you might have done on some other website. Now, that's another way of basically unstructured data analyzing because your social media point of presence. You actually went to Amazon and you looked at certain object. Few hours down the line, you come to your Instagram account or your Facebook account. While scrolling through, you might actually come across the same object as a sponsored ad of Amazon in your feed. Now that's basically kind of using your social media presence and combining it with analytics and then introducing it in different forms. Now, Professor Balaram, I'm really candidly not very well versed with the unstructured data because we've candidly not done a lot of analytics on that. So these are some of the relevant examples I can give. I'll be very honest about it.
Sure, I understand. I think, but the kind how you dealt with, I think, was quite insightful. I think it's especially bringing in the ethical versus non-ethical part. I think that's very critical for students to know also when they're doing their projects as well. I think that's a practice which they need to imbibe as part of their data seeking and data analysis, even for the future. I think Mrinal Shetty also wants to ask the next question. So, Mrinal.
Thank you, sir. I hope I'm audible. Yeah. So I had a two-part question. One was partially answered, so I'll just get into that. You spoke about decision support systems in healthcare. So implementing those in India, I've researched about it a bit, and I saw two major hindrances. One was infrastructure, obviously, and the second, as Shubham and Professor Krishna said, was the inconsistent data. We don't really have any digital records of many of the patients in India. So what do you think would be the possible impact on the implementation of AI in healthcare in India?
Mm-hmm.
And the second question I wanted to ask, the ethical and unethical part, was I saw that GE as well as Cognizant have researched a lot on blockchain and the field of data analytics. But how implementable do you think it really is?
Okay, so first part is about AI in healthcare, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, specifically India, right?
Yeah.
And second is about blockchain, how implementable that is, right?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'll come to the first part now. See, AI is all about implementing machine learning, data science, deep learning on what you already had. So I'm not sure if not having patients' records for everyone would still be a deterrent, because you still have a lot of other patients' data that I've come across in an healthcare industry. I'll not talk about just healthcare, GE Healthcare. See, any healthcare company would not just derive its data sets from one region or one particular, let's say, country. You want to be as broad as possible because that's where the more precise your model will start becoming. For example, in US, you have more gluten allergies. We don't have that much in India. So if you want to specifically focus on that aspect, by taking just one specific data set, it might not give you the relevant results, right? So in any data science model or any machine learning or any AI implementation, I think what really comes is how many parameters can you introduce, and then identifying out of those, like which parameters are the most impactful in a given scenario. Now, typically cancer is a common disease. It happens across the world with different people, different age groups. So you have data across, in healthcare industry, Philips has it, Siemens has it. All of these organizations are utilizing their own remote monitoring and diagnostics, their own applications. They have contractual agreements with their customers that they can get the data directly, eliminating all the PHI information. So when they get a scan, let's say as a G company also, right? Some enterprise might be asking the entire scan data for the entire year from the healthcare providers in any country, or let's say even in India. So even in India, hospitals can provide that information to GE, eliminating all information about what the scan was, whether it was the only information that they can, okay, this is for a male, this is for a female, this is like a heart scan, this is a lung scan, information which is not identifiable to a person specific. Now you've got the scan, you've got the radiologist assessment, and with that, you started building your models. So your AI can still work, even if you don't have a lot of data from a lot of people, because you're not maintaining the hospital records. Fair enough. But you can still get that scan report, that scan images from your hospital providers, and basis of which you can continue to basically ask your teams to work and develop on improving the models. So that's how AI can still work, even though we have got a lot of unstructured scenarios in India. We don't have hospital management. And trust me, I mean, like the more structured you want to make it, right? There's a lot of data privacy issues that comes into. And in data analytics domain, that's a big concern. I just want to like touch briefly on this one. Data governance is a big aspect in analytics. You want to be able to do analytics. It is your responsibility to make sure that the data is not misused. So anyways, coming back to the AI part. So healthcare, you can still continue to build your models. You can continue to improve your systems by your historical data. Every day your scans are done. You really don't need information about that patient. Why do you need to know, did Ram Prasad get this scan done? Or did Abhinav got this scan done? His age was this. The only thing you need is, okay, this was a male, this was a 32 years old male, then this was a chest scan. He probably was recommended or reading on scan is all clear. That's the information you need for your model. Now you start processing that information and you make it up. So that's the first part. Now blockchain, interesting one. I've currently not done a lot of work in this one. We're still working through like how it can be done in the industry. So honestly, I'm not the best person to answer like how blockchain can be implemented at this moment. But the only thing that I can say is blockchain is absolutely a disruptive technology. Has a lot of use cases across industries, especially in terms of maintaining the data integrity. So any transaction where you really, really want to maintain an integrity part without a fail, that you get a complete saying of that I started a transaction, completed to its end or not, versus whether it got done in between and then it has to roll back completely. I think blockchain has a lot of implementations. Even for that example, like I think admissions process is a perfect example. Blockchain can be introduced and added as a application features or as insights with respect to any college admission process. For example, the person recently had a case where he had a all India rank of 232 and he did something wrong on the website and he lost his seat. Now, how do we make sure that our processes are so robust that you don't lose a candidate like this because there is something wrong happened? Did the transaction be able to like raise a red flag? Something happened. Like, I mean, nobody in their sane mind would want to leave an IIT seat at 232. So there's can blockchain basically be introduced in processes like this, where and makes an integral transaction which says, okay, this is all done. Can it actually have more checks and balances in between? So I'm really not sure if I can explain in the best terms, but it's an upcoming technology, very valuable use cases, healthcare records, farming records, maintenance, financial transactions, several use cases. I think the way it needs to see is how it can be implemented, or rather not just how it can be implemented, but how much of adaptability by the people have on it. I think a lot of technologies when they come new, for example, data science, machine learning, neural networks, deep learning, they all have their use cases, practical use cases, but the trust factor doesn't build up so easily. Would a CEO be 100% comfortable relying on a data science algorithm to tell him, okay, this is how my revenue is going to be looking like, versus using a certain data science model, certain machine learning models, as well as sitting with this team and reviewing and saying, okay, understanding how the business landscape looks like. Could any data science model or machine learning model could have predicted 9 months ago or 10 months ago how the supply chains would get disrupted because COVID came in? That parameter was nowhere there at all in any data science models. So similarly, any technology growth will take its time. Its trust needs to be built. Its use case needs to be proven in any industry. Blockchain, I'm pretty sure, can be used in most of the industries, most of the domains. It's just that how trustworthy can you make it? And the sooner you can prove the trustworthiness and the use case and tie it to the benefit of that application or that technology, the sooner it can be implemented. I think that's the biggest challenge or the change mindset that comes in any technology. When we started the journey of the financial league, I think a lot of people were detractors that you cannot do it. Once you start making them these simple use cases and started proving them that this is viable and this is doable, the trust starts building. And that's when people start using it. So same with blockchain. Learn about it, see what is the applicability in your domain area, how you can start to do that with respect to smaller transactions, and how you can make it more trustworthy. The sooner you can do it, I think it's all up to us how we can go and get it implemented. Whether we can just like keep on talking it as a buzzword, like which I'm doing right now. I'm sorry about it. I don't have much of depth about it. Or we can go and start implementing it in a very basic transaction and prove the value of it.
Sure, I think that's very valuable insight that blockchain is still out there, which is to be explored. And some of the challenges of blockchain include the energy consumption, the real-time validation of blockchains, which takes anywhere from 30 minutes to 2 hours. And of course, if you forget the key to or password to your blockchain, you lose it forever. And there are some challenges which are coming up right now. But there are multiple use cases, and let's see. And you guys actually could be one of those guys who actually has a breakthrough in blockchain, for crying out loud, right? So I hope that you guys, one of the students here, actually become the blockchain expert of the future. So it's an open field. Yep. I think we do have a couple of more questions, but I think we already well past time. So I think we should. Abhinav, should we close right now, or you want to extend the? Chandan, what is your? You want to extend?
I can give 10 more minutes. I have a hard stop. Unfortunately, it's 6:15.
All right. So we have 7 more minutes. Very quickly, Keshav, if you want to ask a question not asked already, please go ahead and make it crisp.
Sure, sir. Sure. I'll just make it real crisp. So thank you, Chandan, sir, for such an insightful session. So my question goes on like this, sir. Since you were answering Shubham about the situations when analysis of the data, the information acquired from the analysis of data aid you in decision-making different verticals. But on the other hand, there are always deadlocks when the information acquired post the analysis is in stark contrast with what your experience is telling you, what your consciousness is telling you, what your intuition is telling you. So what are your views on such dichotomical situations, and what is your advice that being future leaders, if we face such situations in our career ahead?
I think, it's a very clear thing, right? Analytics is completely based on data. So your gut might be telling you something, but if the data is telling something, then there is a different story. Especially in analytics space, you've got to trust the data. So either you trust your source of data, that's very important. You have the relevant audits implemented. That okay, once from the system of records, you're able to get into analytics system, and you're able to make sure that the audit is there, and it's absolutely matching up. You've got to trust the data. However, the gut feel is still very strong. It is. A lot of businesses run on that. A lot of CEOs and CFOs run on that. But I think that thing is changing. That mindset is changing. People want to believe more in data and then drive their decisions on it. And as I gave an example of it, right? As the COVID was changing the dynamics of the world in November and December, there have been leaders who put bet on how things might have changed. And some of those companies basically expanded their supply chains rapidly, or their capabilities rapidly. Others did not do it. And I think that is where all your analytics, all your data science models, all your machine learning might fail, because you are seeing a changing world which is happening in front of your eyes. At that point in time, you don't have an insight to give to your systems or decision-making systems like, this is what's happening. When in I think November, when the COVID started happening in China, there were videos coming of doors getting locked down, things happening. A lot of people did not believe that this could happen across the world. Enterprises were running as if nothing was going to happen, everything is all going. Even in January or February, when things were getting really, really bad, businesses were running as usual. There were leaders, there were folks who invested in expanding their supply chains, their warehouses. They realized that something may go wrong. Let's have more inventories. Likes of Big Basket. I mean, in Bangalore, for some reason, they thought things might not work out. They created 3 or 4 different big warehouses. And actually that helped them maintain the deliveries to their customers in a significant way, although it actually got reduced a lot, but still they were able to deliver. Versus a lot of other companies had major issues because now the inventories were not coming because lockdown has happened. Trucks were not plying in the initial first 10 to 15 days. There were shortages of main materials. Stockists did not stock medicines. It was a big issue. Nobody thought about stocking hand gloves, masks, because the 3-ply mask was like a basic commodity for a hospital. Even hospitals did not have enough inventory. So whatever systems you have, there are certain changing dynamics in the world which you still need to monitor and observe. And then taking those changing world dynamics into account, or changing your scenario or environment in account, you still need to make some decisions. So I think it's a best of both worlds. There are times when you need to take both, considering both scenarios and make decisions. Whereas if the world is as normal as it was in like June of 2019, I think I would have said, okay, like I would trust the data.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. I think Aryan, if you have a different question, you can ask. Otherwise, I think we have another 2 minutes.
Sir, my question was already answered, but I would like to thank Chandan, sir, for this thought-provoking session.
Sure, great. Wonderful. I think, thank you, Chandan, for this wonderful session. I really enjoyed myself listening to the industry perspective, the examples you gave from G. It's away from the usual IT examples. It's getting into traditional industries, very enchanting, connecting data and the traditional industries, and especially love the B2B connect there. So thank you for that. I'll hand over to Abhinav to formally close the session.
Thanks a lot, Professor Krishna, sir. And I would also like to thank Chandan, sir, for such an insightful session. We learned a lot from your experience. And once this situation improves, we would like to invite you to our 800+ acre campus. And
well, I would love to. I mean, I'm a born and brought up in Rajasthan. Kota is my hometown. So definitely, maybe someday I can definitely visit and meet some of you at least.
Sure, sir. Sure. We are waiting for that. And I would also like to thank our student faculties, Mayank sir and Preeti ma'am, for helping us in organizing this conclave. And I would also like to thank Professor Krishna Balram sir for accepting our invitation to be the moderator. And thanks a lot, guys, for joining here. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Professor. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Catch you.